Hey everyone, I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor at Healthcare IT Today. We're excited to bring you another in our series of interviews with top leaders in health IT. And today's guest is Jim Jacobs. He's CEO at MediQuant. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to dive into legacy archiving systems and all that's happening with your organization. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself and MediQuant.
Well, thank you. Been in healthcare for quite a while. I'm fortunate to be a part of the MediQuant team. We were founded in 1999. We started in the patient accounting area, actually pioneered active patient accounting, grew into clinical and ERP. We now archive basically any type of systems within the healthcare continuum. Excited to be here.
That's awesome. Well, it's interesting you can do any archiving, but what are the good candidates that you often see at healthcare organizations archiving?
It depends on the health system's priorities. We don't have a technical limit on which systems we can archive, but they usually start with the most common, which are the patient accounting systems, the large clinical systems. Many of the hospitals that we work with are buying ambulatory systems, so they want to archive all of the ambulatory systems. And it really was catapulted with meaningful use. A lot of it's driven now by acquisitions where they want to standardize. But even with ERP, all the other types of systems they see, especially where they're paying maintenance. They're paying maintenance, they want to stop paying maintenance. So many of our hospital customers are just clobbered with operational expense pressure, cost cutting, and we actually play straight into helping them save money. So sky's the limit as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, well, with all the consolidation, there's such a huge need and opportunity to do this rather than continuing to pay those fees. So that makes a lot of sense. How should a healthcare organization think about the data stored in these legacy archives, though? Is it like set it and the HIM person does it, or like what's the right way to think about data in these systems that are archived?
It's a great question. For many CIOs, they're just handed this unbelievable to-do list of hurry up and get these things done. And so we feel their pressure and their pain. I think there's two things to think about, which is there are active workflows that employees, caregivers, providers need. There's clinical workflows, so if a patient presents and all of their allergy information is in the old system, you would want that linked into the new system. If there's a release of information request, HIM needs to be involved. We can actually help convert a patient accounting system before they're completely done, so you can do the work down in our system. So you can turn off the patient accounting system 2-3 years earlier than you would think. That's the first main set of use cases. The second is a belief that this data is valuable. Sort of our Simon Sinek why is we work to liberate data for secondary use. So we continue to have conversations with providers who want to use the legacy data past the immediate use cases. Can you feed this into clinical repositories? What about AI? So many of the new technologies that are just coming to market, we don't even know all the frontiers where these engines could just scour the data and bring out new insights. Talk to someone who's looking at a early warning for remitting, relapsing MS patients.
Wow.
It's this phenomenal use case, and it's like, how can you use that legacy data for further insights? The final thing I'd say is that we don't own the rights to the data, but we can then take that data and help the hospitals or providers themselves, because many of them have their own insurance companies, they are self-insured, they are trying to do more things for their own hospital employee base or for the provider patient base. And so any of those use cases of data we think are long-term, and that's actually more emerging. That's sort of where we believe the field is going.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're saying is they need to be thoughtful. Do you need an immediate access? Are you going to need it for AI, but also even the potential of future use cases?
It's both.
It's amazing how that's evolving. You talked about the value of, getting rid of ongoing software fees or other things like that. Talk about the value that's created when the data is archived to a legacy system in the right way.
So for us, the most valuable data is data that's discrete and data that you can search, that you can gain insights, that you can use matching algorithms, MPI, whatever you need, because so much of the data might be stored in what used to be called best of breed systems. So you'd have a surgery system, a blood bank system, an EMR. The way of the future is these integrated systems. Epic and Cerner have obviously led the way in that. but that's not what historical systems were. So if you can actually bring all those together and link the patients together, support one patient, one record, it can provide tremendous insights. One of the things we've seen where people get under extreme pressure for cost cutting is they just want to throw things on to PDFs. And a disappointment of that is that you lose a lot of the ability to search the data. Obviously you tag the PDFs and things like that, but if you really wanted to link blood pressure across visits, if you wanted to link many of the other valuable data insights, we believe that you need to leave it discrete, otherwise you lose value. I'd say further, a lot of these hospitals are looking at the data as an asset.
Yeah.
Right? If other people want access rights, they charge money for it, or they want value in exchange for it. So if it's an asset, leave it discrete. Make sure it's available. Make sure it's searchable. And I look at some of these latest announcements on AI and search engines and stuff. I wouldn't want to give away any of that value, especially for what's right around the corner.
Yeah. Well, and I think we're at the start of how we can leverage that data. And if it's stuck in a PDF, it makes it all more complicated to get that data out.
Now you have to un-PDF it, right?
Exactly. Which then you have quality issues. So, multiple layers of quality, which is a big problem in healthcare as well. Well, let's talk about your Data Arc product. Tell us what makes that product special?
Well, we started in the active archive space. Just a belief from the beginning, the data's valuable. You have to have it available for secondary use. We feed it into our active patient accounting system. The idea was that clinicians, HIM, PFS directors, all of those groups, they need actionable data to do their jobs, to get things done. They don't want to have to go back in the old system, remember their old passwords. The other is being enterprise scale. Some of these systems now are so large, the data volumes are enormous, and so having a system that scales and keeps it usable and actionable really has been where we are, because we're trying to say, look, it isn't just archive it and put it in the background. You've got to have it available, make sure people can use it, and be a part of the ongoing data assets for the hospital.
I mean, the concept of an active archive is interesting, and one that maybe a lot of CIOs don't fully understand because they haven't dove into it. Help us understand, what are the ramifications of archives that aren't active versus an active archive?
Right, so if you're CIO and you're under pressure to get things done, I can see how you're just like, let me just support some clinical use cases, let me support some basic things, because some of those usage volumes will taper off fairly quickly, especially if it's during a conversion process, whatnot. I would just say that there are so many other uses of the data that happen, and what we see is the uptick in the second set of use cases. So our advice is, stick with it. It may be harder in the beginning, or look harder, or feel harder, but we continue to find huge value in leaving that data discrete. It supports our vision of supporting adjacent spaces, because we don't want to just do a one-off for CIOs. They get stuck with compliance issues. They're getting hit with all sorts of other, what's happening with information blocking, which systems do they have that even pass the rules nowadays. So that all feeds into what is an archiving strategy.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, to be frank, I bet a lot of people don't have a strategy, or they did for maybe the EHR implementation or something.
That is the point, because a lot of CIOs were forced to, get us to meaningful use, move to the next platform. We've got these new initiatives underway. Now we're doing M&A, right? Yeah. So now get in line. We're buying all these ambulatory systems. So we've actually extended our product offering into what's called an application rationalization space. Okay. And what that does is allows a CIO or the office of the CIO, some of them are actually fortunate to have application executives that work for them. We can work on prioritizations, which systems are old. We've worked on some AS4 systems, AS400 systems that you had to reboot every week. How do you prioritize what you work on? We actually have offerings now where we can do essentially all of the work for the CIO, because the people that help them go live with Epic or Cerner often are the same people they need to help archive it. And those people are already extremely busy.
Right.
So we think about, how do we help the people who are in the office of the CIO? And that's where application rationalization came in, because you can look at a roadmap, which systems are most important, which ones are high value, which ones have the highest ROI, as well as which ones have the most risk. There might be one that's got a high ROI, but the risk
Sure.
needs to be contemplated. As well as when you talk about hospital systems that are acquiring other, what if when they buy that system, they could go through a rationalization process as part of the acquisition, and now they can roadmap how do they bring things over. They don't have to do it all at one time, because you might be talking about 100 systems, 150 systems that need to be archived,
Right.
and you don't want to just start all that simultaneously.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So one-time rationalization is a good thing, right? Is when you apply it to applications, and everyone wants to do that, right?
Sure.
Consolidating down to whatever's needed, but you have to do it in a thoughtful way. So that's really good advice. Are there some other important trends in archiving that you're hearing from healthcare organizations that people should know about or be watching?
Well, the rationalization is one. We saw a number of healthcare systems that did rationalization one time, and they put it in a spreadsheet. But it's dynamic.
Yeah, that's
and
interesting.
now if you then buy a second hospital, a third hospital, there are some big systems that bought other big systems. So now you're talking about thousands of applications. And you need to integrate it with your inventory systems, like one of your help desk systems or whatnot. So now it's crossing over into a much larger audience internally. And then you've got to make sure that the constituents know, well, we're going to sunset the system, we're replacing it, because the end users might like the system they're on. So now you've got to talk to them about how you roll that out. The other is where we see hospitals that want to use the data for secondary use, where they want it to, the engines that we have, especially since we keep it discrete, use a FHIR interface, use some interoperability capabilities that they have, and feed other systems. Because the other systems then have the engines. We're not in the business of doing pop health. We're not trying to compete with all the AI engines. They're all specialized. But we are in the conversation, we are in the continuum, and so we then see feeding those systems. That's what's become new.
They want your data.
They want the data. Yes, their data actually.
Sure.
But the idea of doing one system and put it on a glorified tape drive, those days are over. They've got to have it available, actionable, and it has to be pulled into the other systems. And each system may cherry pick which data sets they want. Which makes it ideal because now it's part of the continuum of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, makes sense. I've often said the future of healthcare is built on the back of data, so having access to it to be able to do that.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Is important. I should, that's a good idea. Well, we're here at Vive 2023. We're hearing all sorts of interesting new announcements and progressions within the industry. What's new at MediQuant?
Well, the new things are around the application rationalization for us, and then expanding into areas to help I'll call it the office of the CIO, because their purview is so large now.
It is.
Helping them manage compliance, risk. When you think about the information blocking rules, all of the new regulations that are coming out that they have to face, how do they support interoperability? How do they support the various constituents, support what the clinicians need? Every time I think they've settled on the new EHR, then their boards are buying more systems. The other thing is support for ambulatory, because ambulatory systems are large. The large systems have bought large ambulatory practices. And how do you rationalize that? How do you pull that all together? That's where we're seeing the biggest trends, because the CIOs need to support the future of the EHR, more of the AI, more of all of the new technologies. Where we play in that is we have a direct ROI, so we have an immediate cost savings. So that helps directly facilitate the investments they need to make, and it plays into the strategies of the data strategies that they have. So that's what's new for us, and playing into what the CIOs are trying to do as they prepare.
I like that. There's almost an idea that hey, we need to archive these old systems because there's a bunch of AI and new systems that we need to implement. But no one that I know wants more systems. So we need to get rid of a few so we can add some more.
And it's hard to justify, well, is that data valuable? Well, if you keep it discrete, then you don't have to justify it, because now you've got it. During COVID, our project volumes went up because the hospitals needed to free up resources and cash, the expense side, and that was a dynamic that was interesting for us because they were under so much pressure under COVID. This past year, hospitals have had so much operating loss, so much financial pressure. This plays into helping combat that. Obviously, we're not the sole solution for fixing operational losses, but when you can sit down and go point by point, hard ROI, direct cost savings, people's processes, shutting down legacy systems. It's exciting for us because we're actually directly helping the hospitals, which is a big part of why we're here.
Love it. I love the vision. I love, and it's such an important solution that you're offering. So thanks so much for sharing, and thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com or search for Healthcare IT Today on your favorite podcast application. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.